Hello, my name is Drew the driver with Ride into Cash, or Andrew, my actual name. Uh, I got a text message from someone earlier today asking about if I could break down what it's like working for Spin Scooters. So, what I want to talk about right now is an answer to that question. The answer I have is going to be very specific to the San Diego market because I'm confident that they have different setups between different regions throughout California or even the country. I know that they're in Arizona and a few other places, but I can't speak to how it works over there. I do know that they have two different setups where you could either be a contractor or an employee. The employees are given time frames as to when they're supposed to be picking up and when they're supposed to be deploying, and they're paid a set rate for the hourly. When I signed up, it was originally $18, and it still is $18 an hour. And I've noticed ads for the same area, and now it's at 16. So they've dropped the price for new people being brought on to Spin as employees for San Diego. So I'll do a quick breakdown. It is $18 an hour, or 16 if you sign up later, or if you're in a market where it's a lower price. But here for me, it's 18 an hour. They set up with a schedule through an app called Deputy. It's an app that does the scheduling for each person, for each crew, assigning different areas and things like that. And you work with a few other people each zone. When they first opened up here in San Diego, they had 100 scooters and they had 10 different people signed up to be deploying and picking up scooters to charge. That grew pretty quickly, but early on it was you only get a couple. They expect you to do at least 20 scooters per night, and the way they do the pay setup is 18 an hour. They schedule you between the hours of 9 p.m. and 1 a.m. for picking up, and they want you to be more accurate in your clocking in and clocking out. So you don't just clock in right at 9 and then clock out right at the end of that shift, even if you've already finished like earlier. They want you to be accurate with when you clock in, when you clock out. But most people, when they sign up, when they do it, they're essentially clocking in right at 9, taking the time, going to pick up their base 20 scooters, go home, plug them in, just like stay up, and right at 1 in the morning, clock out. So that's not how you're supposed to do it, or like that's not how we're, as Spin employees, we're not supposed to be doing that way, but most people do. And so it's 18 hours for that's the first shift. The second shift is to drop them off. So after all the scooters are charged, obviously at least 95%, based on the number of scooter cables you have, charge cables you have, you should be able to do a minimum of 20 scooters, getting them to 100%. Then you go drop them off. They also want you to clock in for the morning shift when you arrive at your first deployment spot, and then clock in at your last. Realistically, they can't do that if you knock it out in like 30 minutes. They can't even have you as a shift for they can't force you to take a shift less than a 2-hour period, because if you're an employee, at least that's how it works in California. So when I saw a message about them wanting to enforce a clock in, clock out scheduling thing, it's borderline. They're not really allowed to force you to clock out in less than a 2-hour period if they're assigning you a shift like that. But essentially, pickup hours is between the hours of 9 and 1 in the morning, and that's when your app allows you to see the scooters on the map. Right now, they're in La Jolla, UCSD area, Pacific Beach area, and downtown San Diego. That's the 3 regions that we're in San Diego for Spin scooters. So 18 an hour, 9 to 1 for pickup, and for deployment and drop off, you do that between the hours of, well, it depends. If you are scheduled to pick up a large amount of scooters, they allow you to start as early as 4 in the morning. So the map opens up at 4 in the morning where you can deploy. But your schedule on Deputy, you cannot clock in until 5 a.m. So 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. is the window of time to drop off for scooters. And there's a decent amount of deployment points. They're in groups of 5 throughout these 3 regions I described. So that's a pretty simple process of setting them up. So you're not really fighting with other employees. We're supposed to be working together. We create a schedule. and whoever's working the specific nights create regions and areas within the, so for example, downtown, there's 4 sections of downtown, and we break them up for each person to work essentially a route to make it easier for all of us, which is a nice feature of being an employee instead of a contractor where you're fighting for the scooters. So back to the pay structure. It's 18 an hour. You're scheduled 9 to 1 and 5 to 7 or 4 to 7 in the morning if you are doing larger number of scooters. So essentially it's a 6-hour night or 7, and most of the time you're going to be working on the clock 4.5, 5.5 hours. So that's at $18 an hour. And so it's a pretty decent amount of money for what you're actually doing, because you're not really working the full amount of time, because you're on the clock until the last scooter is plugged in when you're back at your house. So you're getting paid while it's just sitting and charging until that last one's plugged in. So that's kind of nice. But that amount of hours, that amount of dollars, so 18 an hour times those hours. And then they have a bonus structure where anyone who charges above 20 scooters, so 20 spins and above, 20 is the base minimum. Above 20, you get $4 per. So if I charge 50, that ends up getting you an additional $120 on top of your 18-hour wage. So that really makes the difference, especially if you're driving a big vehicle and you can sustain carrying 50 scooters, which is a lot of weight for most vehicles. I do not recommend for small trucks and SUVs. Large vans or big trucks can handle that weight because it's 1,500 pounds of weight on the back of a truck. And so make sure to secure tightly and securely all of the scooters as well when you're transporting. The way I do it, I load up the scooters throughout the night, picking them up, come home, plug them in place in the back of my truck in my driveway, and then throw over a blanket and a tarp to keep it a little warm and keep it from moisture getting to them. That saves me a ton of time from unloading and a lot of back-breaking work, considering they're over 30 pounds a piece. To move them in and out of a vehicle multiple times just is inefficient. So my route is plug and place, charge, and then when they're fully charged for each one, I then swap the cables to the next one. And I have a setup that does about 25 scooter charge cables out in place, so that halfway through the night, I then switch it to the others, and then I try to take a nap before I go and deploy again. So 18 an hour plus $4 extra per scooter above 20. In addition to that, they also pay a $12 mileage for employees. So the employees are paid a mileage of $12 as a base, in addition to your hourly and the bonus. So a night that I do, say, 5 hours, that's $90 in wages, $12 in mileage, so that's 102, and then 120, because I'll probably do 50 in that amount of time, 50 scooters, 120, so that's $222 for 5 hours of work charging scooters at my house. That's pretty good. I do spend about $20 per shift in gas because I drive a larger vehicle. So you take that off of that, bringing it down to 202, and then the amount of power is maybe about $5 max, probably less for charging the scooters depending on your region and where you're at. So it's still looking at like 198, and then because you're an employee, it takes taxes out when you're paid, and all of the stuff with Spin is set up through something called Rippling. It's an app that organizes HR, hiring, and stuff like that. And then they also use Slack, which is a communication app. So when you sign up to be a Spin scooter charger, it actually is mostly remote. So you meet in person for an interview, you sign up online for your HR stuff and your document submission stuff. You end up having 4 different apps: the Spin charger app, the Slack app, which is for communications, the Rippling app, and Deputy app. Deputy is the clock in, clock out, and it is geofenced located, so they ideally want you to start right when you arrive at the first scooter, not when you leave your house. And they're starting to enforce that in regards to following that as a rule. So that's kind of the overview of being a spin employee, spin scooter charger in the San Diego area. I most of the time when you sign up, you submit which area you'd like to work out of, which zone you'd like to be assigned, and which days you can work. Because I work not a full-time job, but I work 5 days a week at a brewery, at a bar. I can only do 4 nights a week and not the weekends. So I'm always working every weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday at my job. And then this job of spin scooter charging is a night thing that falls on the rest of the week. So Monday through Thursday nights, which it would then mean Tuesday through Friday mornings, because you start at 9, you finish, I'm pretty much 9 to midnight is around the route of time I spend. And then the following morning you work. I actually go out at 4 to set them up while not on the clock, and then I clock in at 5 because you can't clock in before your scheduled shift. I'm going to send an email to ask if I can change it where I start at 4, because it just makes more sense to do the deployments earlier, because I can knock it out pretty quickly, avoiding traffic, avoiding people, and it's a seamless, smooth process when you're dropping off so early. So that's my situation with spin, Monday through Thursday nights, and then the adjacent mornings. And I work the amount of real work some nights, depending on how available they are, because since it's so early on into the market, they're mostly hubs. So groups of 5 scooters that you're picking up, or groups of 2 to 4. And there's a couple stragglers. Like if you start right at 9, you'll be able to pick up potentially, if there's enough scooters in the area, 50 scooters in an hour. In an hour. Like the max I did was 51 in 47 minutes. Granted, there's a lot of work involved in swapping out the cables later on the night, making sure that it's covered, tying it down. But all in all, you can if you're working fast and you have a big vehicle, you can make good money pretty quickly. And so there's the spins, like I said, my best, and that was all hubs. It was brand new. We just threw out 200 scooters into downtown San Diego, so the ridership is not adopting it as quickly as one would have hoped. Considering you drive down any street in downtown, you see 20 birds every single street, every single block. There's probably 1,000 scooters just littered across the downtown area. And one more factor regarding San Diego in downtown, they've assigned sections for scooter parking and rideshare bikes. So for employees, we're told not to lay them out on the sidewalks anymore, unless there is no other option. But if there's no option, we send a message to support, and they will remove the like hub for installations, because we are supposed to follow the rule of setting up all the scooters within the specified parking zones, which actually makes it really easy, because there's an official space for the scooters, and they look pretty nice too when you set a 5. Also, Spin is not up to date on the technology for the scooter charging by comparison to Bird and the other ones. And what I mean by that is the app, when you capture a spin, it doesn't actually turn the headlight off unless you lock it from your app. So the route most people do, like back in the day from Limes and Birds, you put a little piece of duct tape on the headlight. That makes your life way easier. I don't like transporting with a bunch of headlights on the side of my truck just blaring. It's unsafe and probably some type of violation from the vehicle code. So I avoid that. I put a piece of duct tape, which works great, because when I deploy it, always make sure to take that off, because you need to have the headlight functioning for when riders get on them. So that's one like little tip and hack and a little time saver feature that you could utilize. So this is the summary of what it's like, what the pay is, and how you kind of set it up regarding working with Spin. I have encountered a couple other people who they had a route laid out. I wasn't aware of it, and they were not so happy that I started to cut into their route, meaning they were getting less scooters. And that particular night was the night I got 51, and the other two chargers who were out, we had a pretty low amount of scooters apparently, because they got like 30 and 28, and ideally we want to have an even amount by the people working. What I wasn't aware of at that time was they're sending ops out, much like Lime used to do, and probably still does, where the operations guys will come out and pick up scooters. I was under the impression that's supposed to be for clearing the map when everyone else has already picked them up, but they're starting early on because they have quotas just the same as we do. So, and their quotas are a lot bigger. Their quotas was like 70 scooters they're expected to get, when ours is a minimum of 20, when we're assigned closer to 40 to 50 each guy. A great night is where you go pick up 50 scooters, you go home, you plug them in, you go hang out, do something, come back an hour and a half, 2 hours later, because they're not ridden that much, you switch them over, and then you go and drop them off. Seamless night, knock it all out, make over $200. That's a good night. The nights where you encounter a lot of problems and damaged scooters and issues or missing ones, that's just a pain in the butt. So hopefully this covers most of what that person who texted me about wanted to know. And if it doesn't, please add a comment below, and I'll try to answer the comment or send it, make another video about your answer. And also, I have a haircut, as some people have noticed. This was because I was raising money for St. Baldrick's Foundation, which is an organization that basically raises funds for pediatric cancer research. So the most underfunded section of cancer research is children's cancer, and unfortunately that's also the most aggressive form of cancer when it happens to a kid. So where I got a part of the program to raise some money. I didn't raise a lot because I didn't have that much time in my attempt to raise money, but I did raise about like $75 and donated that toward the organization. And it had an event adjacent with it where me and our team, because the event was a part of the work that the job that I have at Hez Brewing, 35 different people had shaved their heads at that event, including the owner, the owner's wife. And why that organization is so important is the owner and his wife's daughter actually has a rare aggressive form of bone cancer, and she's actually like lost her leg. And basically when he looked into the research from that disease that she was afflicted by, he found out that it's the most underfunded one, and so wanted to put something, wanted to join an organization to work toward raising money for this. And the event actually raised $52,000 between everyone involved and all the donations brought in, which is pretty amazing. So that's why I have a shaved head, and not just to look stylish, I guess, or whatever. But thank you for watching, and comment below if you have any questions. Like the video, share, and subscribe to the channel, and have a great day.